Hi-ho, Jackie and Nicole here. We're going to talk about Pigeon. The idea for Pigeon is to externally rotate the hips and give yourself one of the deepest hip stretches out there. The reason I have Nicole facing this direction is because I want to talk about what happens in the back when you're doing Pigeon. Having your students line up and keep the left hip and the left ankle in line with each other. I usually tell them turn around and look, because if this ankle, which is out here past your hip, needs to come this way. Does that make sense? It's like they get their leg out and they get it way out there. And you want it to be in line with their actual hip, not pushing out about a foot in the other direction. And then their right knee is basically in line with the right shoulder. Now their right foot might be a little bit further up or way far back. It just depends on the amount of flexibility that they have in the hip. Then I'm going to have her roll forward, and as she comes forward, if she's sitting way down into this right hip, her back is now going to be off center. Her hips are not in alignment. So I'm going to have her bring herself upright and stop sitting into that hip, which means that right hip is going to come up. Then the right hip pulls back as the left hip pushes forward, and what it does is it lengthens and flattens the low back. So now her spine should be straight instead of kind of sitting out to the side. Now as a teacher, sometimes what I'll do is I'll come in and I'll actually make some adjustments. So I'm going to have her go ahead and move up onto the blanket, and then I'll show you some of those adjustments. So go ahead and come up and then just lay this straight. And you can do the other leg. I'm just going to leave the camera rolling because we're just going to get into this pretty quickly. So as a teacher, I would kind of stand on this side of her and actually take a look at what's happening between her left hip and her left ankle. Again, if it's shooting out to the side, I would actually tell her to pull it back in so that it's in line. Left shoulder, left knee. Then when she's ready to come forward, if she's sitting too far into the left hip, then it would be a matter of bringing the body up out of that hip. Go ahead and drop all the way down. And then telling your client to pull the left hip back and the right hip forward. And you'll find where you are. Now, as a teacher, it's really good if you want to pamper your students, you're going to get into their space, so it's a good idea to ask their permission to touch them. But you can take one hand and place it on the low part of the spine, take your dominant hand and run it down the length of the spine, all the way into the back of the head and into your neck. Sometimes I just kind of weeble wobble their head back and forth to make sure that there's no tension in the back of the neck. Sometimes you can even take both hands and push on the back of the shoulder blades. Now their foot that's over here, if they are still sinking too heavy into the right hip, then you just ask them to dorsiflex that foot and pull the toe back toward their face, and it lifts that right hip up. So see what happens when you just let go of that. Do you feel how that drops a little bit? Yeah. And then when you dorsiflex back, it kind of gives that hip a little bit of support. But again, the left hip is back, the right hip is forward, and that's what levels out their spine. If you are sitting like way into that left hip, you're going to find that your clients are stretching the piriformis. And if their piriformis is sore, then it's probably not a good idea to stretch it that deeply and set way into it. So they're going to enjoy how it feels when they shift that left hip up and then pull it back. It should help take some of that pressure out of the piriformis. Okay? Pigeon.